Thanks for being with us here on Live Now from Fox. I'm your host, Christina Evans. Let's continue on with more on this travel ban that was just announced by President Trump. I want to show you this live look that we have there at the White House. But this sweeping new travel ban on citizens from a dozen nations was announced by the White House yesterday, reviving a defining effort from the first Trump administration to crack down on entries from specific countries. Trump said in a video posted yesterday that new countries would be added to the travel ban as, quote, threats emerge from around the world. The 12 countries targeted, plus 7 more, will face partial restrictions and are mostly nations with frosty relationships with Washington, D.C. Let's now listen into that announcement that President Trump made yesterday.
The recent terror attack in Boulder, Colorado, has underscored the extreme dangers posed to our country by the entry of foreign nationals who are not properly vetted, as well as those who come here as temporary visitors and overstay their visas. We don't want them. In the 21st century, we've seen one terror attack after another carried out by foreign visa overstayers from dangerous places all over the world. And thanks to Biden's open door policies, today there are millions and millions of these illegals who should not be in our country. In my first term, my powerful travel restrictions were one of our most successful policies, and they were a key part of preventing major foreign terror attacks on American soil. We will not let what happened in Europe happen to America. That's why on my first day back in office, I directed the Secretary of State to perform a security review of high-risk regions and make recommendations for where restrictions should be imposed. Among the national security threats their analysis considered are the large-scale presence of terrorists, failure to cooperate on visa security, inability to verify travelers' identities, inadequate record-keeping of criminal histories, and persistently high rates of illegal visa overstays, and other things. Very simply, we cannot have open migration from any country where we cannot safely and reliably vet and screen those who seek to enter the United States. That is why today I am signing a new executive order placing travel restrictions on countries including Yemen, Somalia, Haiti, Libya, and numerous others. The strength of the restrictions we're applying depends on the severity of the threat posed. The list is subject to revision based on whether material improvements are made, and likewise, new countries can be added as threats emerge around the world. But we will not allow people to enter our country who wish to do us harm, and nothing will stop us from keeping America safe. Thank you.
All right, that was the announcement that was made yesterday from the Oval Office, hearing it there from the president himself, speaking out about this sweeping new travel ban on 12 countries. To talk a bit more about this, I want to bring into the conversation immigration attorney Susham Modi. Susham, thanks so much for being with us here on Live Now from Fox. We've talked about a number of different issues over the last few months, but focusing now on this sweeping new travel ban. What stuck out to you first when this announcement was made?
Yeah, thanks for having me back on, Christina. I mean, the biggest thing that maybe stuck out is that the alleged suspect that did that horrific act in Colorado, that's completely uncalled for and horrific. It's alleged that he's from Egypt, and Egypt is not on this travel ban list. So that's probably the biggest thing that stuck out. I think second, it's a much broader list than the first travel ban. So to take a step back, we definitely need to look historically in 2017 at President Trump's first travel ban and what had happened with that.
And so as we're taking another look here at some of these airports from around the country, these are some of the places where folks often come, especially the Atlanta airport, Hartsfield-Jackson, the busiest airport in the entire world, a huge center for folks who are coming to America. But let's continue to look into what's happening with this travel ban. Who is it going to mainly affect? We have the question of green card holders or existing visa holders as well. Are they going to be impacted by this? As you said, we can look back to 2017 to get maybe a litmus test of where this is going.
Yeah, so For green card holders, there's an exception for them. And honestly, I think what the Trump administration has done is they looked back at what the court said during that first travel ban. During the first travel ban in 2017, courts put it on hold. And, it was called the Muslim ban. And in that first ban, it was predominantly all Muslim countries that were banned. At that time, the courts put it on hold also because President Trump had called out Muslims in specific ways in the media, which was actually used in the court opinions themselves. As it litigated throughout the courts and eventually went to the Supreme Court, the first Trump administration kept revising the travel ban to try to get it approved. Eventually, it did in a 5-4 split decision by the Supreme Court. It got approved. And so, to answer your question, Christina, about green card holders, I think this travel ban is not only broader to be more likely approved by the Supreme Court this time around, but also has broader exceptions, including for green card holders.
Let's talk about some of the countries that were also included this time in the first term of the travel ban that was enacted. Syria, Iraq, North Korea, and Nigeria, they were included in there. But this time they've been excluded from the administration's list. And as President Trump made that announcement, why is this the case? Why would he choose to allow these countries to not be on the banned list? Does it have something to do with some of that Supreme Court case that happened at the first time?
To be frank, Christina, we don't know why those countries were not included and what's behind the national security reasoning, because the Trump administration hasn't stated why they excluded those countries but included them the first time. What I will tell you is at least 3 of those 4 countries, we've had asylum cases where people are afraid to go back to those countries because they think they may get tortured or persecuted. And I can tell you from my own research of country condition reports and human rights reports, I don't think those countries have gotten safer. They've gotten worse. So it is a bit odd that those countries were not included or as they were in the first travel ban.
Is this going to impact citizens as well who are looking just to simply visit those countries? They could be U.S. citizens born and raised wanting to go back to their motherland. Was that going to likely affect them if they like to get on a flight, travel over there? Will they be able to come back smoothly?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. What I would recommend for U.S. citizens traveling abroad is very carefully check the U.S. Department of State advisory bulletin for traveling, because that might stray diplomatic relations and it may get worse for U.S. citizens traveling back to those countries, whether to visit family or vacation or otherwise. So very important to track developments there with the U.S. Department of State travel advisory.
You mentioned people who likely are seeking asylum here. That's one of the reasons that people decide to travel to the United States. What about long-term immigration? We know that immigration is one of the specialties that you focus on there with your practice. What do things look like for folks looking to come and stay here permanently?
Yeah, I mean, there is an exception for immediate relatives. The way the Immigration Nationality Act defines that is like parents, spouses, and children. But there's not an exception for non-immediate relatives. So think siblings or children over 21. They may be banned under this and may need to apply for a waiver. So in that sense, those immigrants or applications for permanent residence may be affected. Another one is employment-based green cards, and that could also affect the economy. So there is going to be major effects, and there is going to be a need to look into those waivers for those individuals.
All right, and lastly, Shushan, before I let you go, let's talk about some of these major international events that are going to be held here in the United States. This, of course, includes the Olympics as well as the FIFA World Cup. We know that with these international events, folks travel from all over the world. Could this potentially impact any of those countries that are hoping to travel here, maybe with their Olympic team, or those who would just like to come and be spectators? Would they be affected by this?
Yeah, I would say 2 points to that. First, there is an exception for athletes, and we worked on several cases, including for Olympians. So there is an exception for those. But think in terms of the fans, those could be highly affected because both the 12 countries that have the ban and the 7 countries that have the temporary ban, B1, B2 visitor visas are affected. So that could very much strain relationships with those countries, and there's been speculation whether that's going to be protested and whether the event still goes on. So definitely for the fans, it's going to be a bigger issue than the athletes.
All right, taking a final look there at some of those countries that are currently being restricted by Trump's new travel ban. As you can see, a portion of them in red, full restriction there, partial restriction from some of the others on that list. Shushan, before I let you go, any final thoughts on this or any lasting words of advice for folks who may be affected by this travel ban?
Yeah, I would say a few final thoughts. Number one, again, it's a bit odd that Egypt wasn't included, which is the individual, the suspect of the Colorado attack. Number two, this is a very new and complicated issue. I remember I've been practicing for a long time, almost 15 years. I was practicing during the first travel ban. So waivers are going to be really important as her consultations with immigration attorneys, whether they fit under the automatic exception or whether they need to file for a waiver as well. And then the third thing I would say is, including for US citizens, need to be really careful with travel. Check where the US Department of State advisory bulletin is going to happen. And also, you may see increased vetting by Customs and Border Protection upon reentry. So to prepare for that as well.
Certainly will be an interesting story that we continue to follow here on Live Now from Fox. As this ban is set to go into effect on Monday, we'll continue to keep you updated as we learn more. And we appreciate, as always, Susham Modi here, immigration attorney, here with us to help us break down the very latest.
Thank you, Christina.